Today's video dedication is brought to you with thanks from Dan Kirch. Atraxa versus Carador. And we've got, a turn 2 Skyshroud Claim, and then Vampiric Tutor will be able to get whatever we need. Oko is decent removal. Got pretty much everything we need in our opening hand there. And we are on the draw. Our opponent gets down some fast mana as well in the form of Mana Vault. And there is a Cyclonic Rift, so all we're doing is getting down the Tricycle Land. Wow, even more fast mana. Mana Crypt this time. And then a Hermit Druid. So maybe it's worth getting down the Oko, switching off the Hermit Druid. Because with this thing you can turn your whole deck upside down into your graveyard, and it's usually part of some kind of combo. Alright, Teferi's Protection now, so yeah, I think we're best going for shocking in the Breeding Pool, play the Mana Crypt, and we'll hold off on the ramp and go for Oko, switch off the Hermit Druid. Does mean that they're going to be able to whack the Oko back for a bunch of damage, but yeah, maybe we'll be able to go for Ravenous Chupacabra sometime soon, I'm not sure. Yeah, so knocking Oko down to 2 loyalty with the Hermit Druid. And then we see a Grizzly Salvage, the first means of loading up the graveyard for our opponent. And we see there Midnight Reaper, Devoted Druid, Vizier of Remedies, and a Nightmare Shepherd. They did manage to make a land there as well. Okay, no land for us. Could maybe get down the Narset here. I think we're pretty much just holding up Vamp Tutor and Cyclonic Rift, because we are missing lands here annoyingly. Alright, so I'll get out the untapped lands just in case we feel the need to use the Cyclonic Rift. So it can be +2 to create a food token. It will still survive against the Elk at least. Our opponent swings into Oko straight away, and not sure we're going to see any other plays here. Could go for the Carador, which would be good for the Ravenous Chupacabra next turn. We see Elves of Deep Shadow first, and a Safri Eric's Daughter, so yeah, I think we go for Vamp Tutor now. Not entirely sure what I want to go for, to be honest. More mana would be useful. I think just guaranteeing a land on the top wouldn't be the worst thing. Let's just shove a command tower on top of our library. Not the flashiest tutor, but we're not going to get into lands organically, then we'll just shove one on top. So do draw into the command tower, of course. And let's go for, it can be the Ravenous Chupacabra. That can go onto the Safi, give our opponent as big a headache as possible here. Then sacrificing the Safi to have the Elves of Deep Shadow come back if we decide to blow it up, which we're not going to anyway, so it doesn't matter. The Oko can go head to head with the Hermit Druid, so we'll buff up the Ravenous Chupacabra, and if we decide to flicker the Ravenous Chupacabra at some point, then it will come back in its regular state, so that doesn't matter. Play out the Narset. And then we can minus down on the Narset, and of course there we see some lands on the top after we did the shuffle with the Vamp Tutor, a Shriekmaw as well, so totally whiffing on the Narset there, but we do clear 4 cards off the top, which wouldn't necessarily have minded seeing any of those, to be honest. So now we're at risk of giving our opponent back the Hermit Druid once it trades with the Ravenous Chupacabra, but we are slowing our opponent down at least, assuming that they don't have any reanimation in hand. Haven't made use of this Mana Vault yet that they threw down so quickly. Luckily for them, we haven't had removal for it. And there's some more ramp in the form of Ancient Tomb. Alright, there is an Austere command, so maybe should have held up the Teferi's Protection. Going to get rid of our, the Ravenous Chupacabra and the fast mana. So we could see the back of one of our Planeswalkers here, which we likely do. They do of course get rid of their own mana though. So which Planeswalker do they want to get rid of? Yeah, the Narset, so we're going to be left with an Oko. Oko will go down to 1 loyalty. And there is an Urborg for us, which will fix their black mana. But if we draw into a land next turn, then we'll be able to get down the Atraxa, so it might be worth just giving them the black mana. They do have double black already. Not particularly worried if they take a bunch of life or not to the Ancient Tomb, so yeah, go for the Urborg. And if we're going to lose the Oko next turn anyway, we might as well plus onto the Elves of Deep Shadow, and we'll take them off some mana. Could always go to Teferi's Protection and hold on to the Oko for as long as possible and pray for a land. Okay, our opponent correctly going through to combat straight away. Just sends Hermit Druid in at the Planeswalker. Yeah, they both go in, so our opponent's a capable player. assuming that we're going to remove one of them. Yeah, screw it, we'll use the Teferi's Protection now, because all we're really trying to do is buy ourselves some time, and the more that they don't swing in at us directly, the longer that we'll have in the game, of course. Noteworthy that that does switch off the black mana from the Urborg as well, as long as that thing is phased out. Okay, so see if we get into a land. We don't. It is a Sylvan Library though. So, yeah, that just gives us even more chance to get into a land. I haven't struggled this much with Atraxa. Obviously would have had it out before now if we hadn't seen the back of the fast mana, which obviously our opponent noticed as well. So might as well create a food token with the Oko, because it's going to go down next turn. This will encourage them to dedicate both their creatures to it again. Could go for a 2-mana Cyclonic Rift and bounce back the Elves of Deep Shadow, in the spirit of buying as much time as possible from our opponent. Looks like it might be relevant that the Elves of Deep Shadow can't tap for mana. So going through to combat again, 3 cards in hand. Both going in at Oko, so let's go for the bounce. Bounce the Elves of Deep Shadow, which they'll be able to recast this turn. But we get to keep our Oko this way. And we're empty-handed, so might as well crack a food token. Our opponent isn't going to be surprised by anything in our hand at the end of the turn. Our opponent gets down another land in the form of Vivid Meadow, and the Elves of Deep Shadow again. Alright, Displacer Kitten isn't all that useful to us, but we'll hopefully get into more mana off the Sylvan Library. Okay, apparently not. Do we have anything? We can flash back the Skyshroud Claim with the Snapcaster Mage, I suppose. Either way, I'm pumping life into this. So let's go for Snap Mage. And as opposed to the Vamp Tutor, go for Skyshroud Claim. Luckily, it seems as though we're both struggling on mana this game. Then cast the Skyshroud Claim. I'm not going to hold up any mana here. I'll just get down some Tricycle lands, I think. And then, yeah, we'll just plus onto the Snap Mage, making it an Elk again. And then if they want to try and go wide, then they can only deal 1 damage to the Elves, to the Oko with the Elves of Deep Shadow. But we're finally in a position by turn 7 where we can cast Atraxa. I don't think it's ever taken us as long to cast the Atraxa. Seen a Flagstones of Trocaire as well now, so yeah, we'll trade the Snap Mage for the Hermit Druid, and if they're able to get it back, then so be it. We've got a Solitude to permanently exile it now, and they will have Summoning Sickness when that comes back anyway, so it should give us a chance to do something about it. The Solitude with the Displacer Kitten in play would be good, so probably not going to evoke this down. Now we see a Yosei the Morning Star, which luckily they can't sacrifice. That might have to be a Solitude sooner than later. Wow, still not getting into any lands off the top. It's crazy. Yeah, I think we just keep all this stuff. So the first thing I want to do is definitely debuff the Yosei, because I don't want to be skipping my draw step. And do we just want Displacer Kitten and Wood Elves at this point? I mean, we're really struggling on mana, and while we've got cards in hand, we're not necessarily desperate to get down the Atraxa, so I think I'm fine with this. Play out the Wood Elves as well, and then we're holding up the Mystical Tutor, get down the last Triome so that we're not drawing into tap lands. So we can go Mystical Tutor at the end of my opponent's turn, and that will flicker the Wood Elves. So we'll shuffle our library around with the Wood Elves before we put the card on top with the Tutor. Obviously don't want to shuffle afterwards. Alright, Vindicate. Going on to our Oko. Can we flicker with this? Yeah, we could do. We could keep the Oko in play and then chump with the Wood Elves. I think I'm actually going to do that. Oko's been massive for us this game, so I'm actually going to do that. We'll exile the Oko, bring it back into play with Displacer Kitten. Does mean that we're going to have to chump block with the Wood Elves and lose it most likely. Yeah, and our opponent scoops to that. I understand that. They haven't even seen Atraxa yet, and we're just constantly drawing into... There we go, there are the lands. So top 3 cards at the end of the game is mana, so a bit too late to the party there, but yeah, it just shows that it's a good stuff deck and it can do well even without Atraxa entering play apparently. Playing against Nikia this time, which I haven't seen in a long time. There is Mox Diamond. We don't have a spare land to play. We could grab one with Imperial Seal maybe. Mana Vault. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. We'll have to mulligan. Too few lands for my liking. Yep, another one-lander. Don't know what it is during this play session. We can't get into lands, and then of course we just draw into a boatload of them. So keep that. Get rid of Risen Reef and the Godless Shrine. And then it is a Savannah, because we need a forest in play to have the Utopia Sprawl go onto that, and it can be a blue mana that it taps for. Somberwild Sage from our opponent because he managed to get out a mana crypt, so that's a lot of mana our opponent's got next turn. Another shock land, so we'll just go for the Sylvan Library off the one land, and then I'll get down a Tricycle land with the Marsh Flats. Nikia down by turn 2 thanks to all the fast mana. And then we see a Mosswort Bridge for our opponent. They'll need power 10 or greater on the board, so they're halfway with their commander alone. Alright, draw into Solitude. Definitely going to go for the card draw with Sylvan Library. Alright, and there is a Skyshroud Claim we can do this turn, so we'll keep these. Play an Underground Sea, because it comes in untapped, into Skyshroud Claim. And we can just grab some Tricycle lands here. Not worried about bluffing about holding up cards against my opponent. Lotus Cobra from our opponent, then making landfall with Game Trail. And there we see Balefire Dragon, which will attempt to keep our creatures out of play. We can defend against that with Atraxa though. Nikia swinging in at us for the first 5 points of damage. And we've seen a Yeva enter play now as well, so they can cast green creature spells with Flash. Noteworthy that they couldn't get down something like Balefire Dragon with that, of course. Alright, so there's Generous Gift, Nature's Law, Ashiok. I'm not particularly bothered about. We do have to be careful of our life if we're going to be seeing big creatures. So maybe hard casting the Solitude. Ready for Generous Gift next turn is fine, so let's pay the 4 life there. And then we can shuffle with the Bloodstained Mire, because I want to get an untapped land in here. Don't want to take the shock to the Watery Grave. So Scrub Land, and then it can be Nature's Law. Just go for the Overgrown Tomb in tapped, and we'll play a Solitude being hard cast. And this can get rid of the Balefire Dragon. It'll have to, because the Solitude will die to the Balefire Dragon. And we've got a decent flicker target now. We're going to take another decent hit next turn, but I'm hoping with only 4 cards in our opponent's hand they won't be able to do too much to us. I hope. Okay, Kessig Wolf Run is a pretty scary one. Continuing to make a bunch of mana with the Somberwild Sage. These 2 cards making a bunch of manas made all the difference. So they've got another massive creature coming in. This time is a Woodfall Primus, so that could get rid of the Sylvan Library. Could get rid of a land. Maybe getting rid of this would be a good idea for them. And that's exactly what they do, so that takes us down by 2 mana. But we can still cast Atraxa next turn, which will be a good lifelinker for us. Alright, Duplicant, ironically exiling the Solitude. Down to 1 card in hand though. We take a hit for 11, going down to 10. And there is a Foundation Breaker and some lands. So yeah, I think getting rid of Foundation Breaker and a Wooded Foothills is fine. Put those on top. Again, just trying to dodge the shock from the Watery Grave. And we can shuffle those cards away with a Scalding Tarn as well. So we'll get in a Tundra. And we'll cast the Atraxa. Atraxa will see some new cards thanks to the shuffle. So we've got Cyclonic Rift as an instant. That is the only instant we've got available. Oko is the only Planeswalker. 2 creatures, Wood Elves and Snap Mage. So we take the Snap Mage there, I think. 1 enchantment in Darksteel Mutation. 1 sorcery in 3 visits. And we'll just take an island, seeing as how we're worried about life at this point. So that puts us on 8 cards. We'll get rid of the Shockland. And it's only turn 5 here, amazingly. Just need to pray that our opponent doesn't get rid of the Atraxa here, because its lifelink is the only thing that's really helping us. Our opponent could have a massive overrun effect. There is a Regal Force, a means of refilling their hand, so they go straight back up to 7. They do seem to be doing things during the first main phase as well, which would encourage us to go for Cyclonic Rift on their turn maybe. Noteworthy that they do have the Yeva in play, but they don't seem to be playing at instant speed. And then they went for the Kessig Wolf Run, so that will be 10 points of commander damage from the Nikia, which I'm not sure we'll be able to survive here. Yeah, I'm not entirely confident that we'll be able to. Yeah, they can turn everything in sideways. I don't think there's a way for us to survive here. It if this thing wasn't swinging in, then we would be able to, but I don't think we can survive this. Yeah, it's just this creature that's going to finish us off, because this is 16 damage here, so the Kessig Wolf run was absolutely relevant there. If it wasn't for that, I think we might have been able to stabilise there, because we would have been able to swing in again next turn, gain 7 more life with this, wipe their board to slow them down, which allows us to gain 7 more life over the next turn, and yeah, then we're getting into all the control pieces and stuff, so just too fast against our opponent. We will try one more, I think. Alright, Imperial Seal. We don't have an untapped black mana available to us, up against Carador again, by the way. But I think we can keep that anyway and go a little bit slower. Go for some fast mana for the Skyshroud Claim on turn 3. Our opponent just gets down a tapped Temple Garden. We see Heroic Intervention, so we definitely want our black mana available to us next turn. So play that out here and pass. 2 mana available for our opponent, but not using it at the moment. We draw into the Vamp Tutor. So all we're doing here is getting down another Tricycle land, and it can be a Sol Ring off the Imperial Seal, because we'll be able to play that and go for the Skyshroud Claim next turn. So that just sits on top of our library unless our opponent can force us to shuffle. A Grizzly Salvage at instant speed at the end of our turn. Everything being dumped in the bin there. A Flagstones, Woodland, Vivid Meadow, Swords to Plowshares. Oh, actually there was something else, wasn't there? I just saw 5 cards and thought they'd missed. Temple of Malady is what they put into their hand. And they've just gone for the Strip Mine onto us, so getting rid of a Tricycle land from us, which means we're not going to be able to go for the Sol Ring into Skyshroud Claim. We can hold up Beast Within, which might be worth doing here then. Might be more intelligent to hold up Heroic Intervention, but yeah, they've left us with a black mana, so we'll be able to go for Vamp Tutor during the upkeep and get more fast mana if they blow up the Sol Rings, so yeah. Let's fight fire with fire here. Doing it here means that the beast won't have summoning sickness. I'm not really too worried about that. They decide to float the white mana. Maybe could have done it during their upkeep to not take the 3 damage next turn, but... And also, if I'd done that, then if they'd had Heroic Intervention or some kind of protection to avoid that, then they would have had to tap out during their turn, so doing that during the upkeep was probably the better thing to do there. So there we see the Temple of Malady that they grabbed. So we do take that 3 damage, of course. And there is a Displacer Kitten, so going to shock in the Hallowed Fountain, and then we can hold up the Vampiric Tutor. We'll need some more black mana, so many black Tricycle lands as we can grab here. Okay, and our opponent scoops, so don't fancy their odds of being able to outrace us. Yeah, still not satisfied there, so you're getting another game. Okay, up against Thron. Farewell is pretty much all we're doing there against Thron, so yeah, we just want to be ramping out Atraxa as soon as we can, which we've really struggled with this game. Alright, actually seeing some ramp there. No forest for the Utopia Sprawl, no green mana for the Nature's Law actually, so screw it, we're on the draw, let's just try it. Get rid of the Eternal Wanderer. Just have to pray that we draw into green mana now. Okay, and Anguished Unmaking, we get down a tap land to start off. Sanctum Weaver is the first spell our opponent casts, so I'm assuming that they're going for some kind of aura-based Voltron deck of some kind. A Reclamation Sage isn't helping us. We can still go for an Evoked Solitude if we want to. If our opponent does go for some kind of Enchantress, then I will blow it up with Solitude. Okay, there is a Nettle Seist. So a mixture of equipment and auras. We can go for the Solitude on our turn. So let's see if we draw into a land here. A Mana Crypt means that we can go Anguished Unmaking onto the Sanctum Weaver. So play out the Mana Crypt, and we'll hold them off on some mana to try and keep them away from the Thrum for as long as possible, because our targeted spot removal isn't going to help against that. We've also got Toxic Deluge held up for when the Thrum comes in, of course. That debuffs the Germ Nettle Seist as well. Our opponent did drop a land as well, so we would have seen the Thrum there. That is a Tanuki Transplanter, and does count as an artifact creature, so hitting us for 2 with the Germ. So still praying for this green mana. Haven't had the best of luck playing against opponents with Atraxa because I don't think players like playing against it, so neutering my plays here is pretty much all I can do to get real games going, and we're certainly doing that. Now, does Gilded Drake target? Yeah, one target creature an opponent controls, so maybe can steal this thing away. And that will give us our green mana as well, so play out the Gilded Drake. That should be able to get us into the game. So they've got a flyer to jump in the way of Atraxa now, but like I said, we can swing in with this next turn and we will have green mana for the Nature's Law. And if they play out Thrun here, especially with a Rogue's Passage, then it's likely that we go for a Toxic Deluge anyway after the Nature's Law. So yeah, we see the Thrun. They'll need 2 extra mana. They've got 3 cards in hand, but they'll need 2 extra mana to get their Thrun back into play after we blow it up. So swinging in with the Germ token isn't a good idea against a 2-4. So yeah, just swinging in with the 3-3 into the red zone. That does have flying. Alright, so there is an Eternal Witness which will be useful. First thing we want to do is swing in with the Tanuki. We'll lose it in combat, but we're going to wipe the board anyway. Gives us our coveted green mana. And we get the 2 green mana thanks to its power. Thrun jumps in the way of that immediately, as you would expect. And then it is Nature's Law. We can bring in an untapped forest, which can be a Savannah here. Utopia Sprawl onto the Savannah. And that can be green mana again in case we need to tap that down for white. And then we'll play ourselves a Toxic Deluge. We only have to put 3 into that because this has damage markers on it already. Actually, is this indestructible? No, it's during their turn it's indestructible, so we don't have to worry about putting 5 life into the Deluge here. Because while it's our turn, -3/-3 plus 2 damage equals death on that thing. So down goes the Thrun and the Germ with the Nettlecyst, so they'll have to replay their commander and then put 2 mana into the Nettlecyst as well. But we should have bought ourselves at least a couple of turns there, unless they slam down some fast mana. But we can always go E-Witness onto the Toxic Deluge as well. This will tap for double green, don't forget. And if we manage to make a land next turn, then I'll be able to go for Atraxa. It is tempting to go E-Witness onto the Nature's Law, maybe, but we won't be able to cast it next turn, thanks to a lack of green mana. Alright, so there is the Citizen Champion. We saw that, that Enchantress I was worried about, and 6th Sense going onto that. They have 3 cards in hand. Still only on 5 mana, though. We get into a land. It's a tap land, Field of the Dead. Yeah, so just hard casting Solitude is fine here. Definitely would love to see the back of the Citizen Champion. And we've got the mana for Atraxa next turn as well at this point. So Solitude, exiling the Citizen Champion. They go up to 42, but they lose the enchantment as well. So we're doing a nice job controlling our opponent here, and it looks like we're going to outrace them. Emerald Medallion is a nice one, so all they need is a land now. And there is Thrun in a different form, Thrun the Last Troll. Not taking a bolt to the Mana Crypt. A Painful Truths isn't terrible. We've just got more chance of getting into lands off Atraxa at this point, or at least a land. So throw down the Atraxa. And let's see here. Wow, we only got 1 land in all of that, so I'm glad I did it. Marsh Flats, Mox Diamond, I think, will be pretty useless if we're not getting into lands. So it can be the Lightning Greaves for the artifact. Baleful Strix is an artifact as well. Creatures is Birds, Foundation and Snap Mage. I think we'll go for the Snap Mage. Only 1 Planeswalker in Narset. And then it's Imperial Seal or Farseek for the sorcery. I think I'll just go for the Farseek. And that fills up our hand nicely. Get down a land. And there's no 1-drop, so yeah, we'll just go for the Tricycle land now. Not going to swing in the Solitude for the lifelink because it's up against a 4/4 Thrun. Yeah, and our opponent decides to scoop it up there. This is what happens with Atraxa. I mean, it's fair enough. It's just a really obnoxious commander. But I handicapped myself as best I could in these games and did alright in them anyway. See what we were drawing into next turn. Yeah, finally getting into a land. That seems to happen a lot. Once the game's over, we actually start getting into the mana. But yeah, pretty much all we're doing here is starting to land commander damage on our opponent and trying to control the game in the meantime. Farseek and Narset is probably what we get down next turn. But honestly, mono green, I'm not sure what our opponent's going to do other than Song of the Dryads onto Atraxa. We've got Flicker Shenanigans in this deck anyway, so probably could get out from underneath a Song of the Dryads. So yeah, that's a good game to my opponents. Hopefully you all enjoyed this revisit to Atraxa. I know that this commander really upsets some people, but well, you can always not watch the video, can't you? I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.